I should have a good person. There should be some other good person. So as compared to him, I'm a bad person. So as compared to him, I'm a good person, like that. So there's no kind of like inherent existence or independent existence of good and bad. To comparing with the other whole and parts, then we can say, yes, this is good, this is bad. Now third, mental projection, that's the Madhyamika, Prasangika, they always tells, the mental projection. To call this as a green apple, it should have the qualities. It should have a green color. So it's more like a mental projection. Mental projection, one can't like say that it's my right that I want to project this as a green apple like that. We have to go through the 3 more divisions. So this phenomena, it depends upon the designation. It's the toughest. So when we see an object, we see as a kind of like independent, inherent existence. Then we feel attached to it. When we feel attached to it, then there's a suffering. First ignorance, then misconception, then anger, hatred, jealousy, all this comes. So to understand the dependent origination, the emptiness, and all these things, we need to study 21 years to get the highest Geshe doctorate degree. Not of like 4 years, 5 years like that. To get the lower degree, we have to study 16 years. So especially the Madhyamikas, very tough. So now His Holiness the Dalai Lama has taken up a little bit upper level, has taken to the another level. For the almost 4 decades, His Holiness the Dalai Lama wants to have a dialogue with a scientist. And some of his friends advise him not to talk with a scientist. Why? Because they are science of the killer of the religion. Science is the killer of religion. And His Holiness the Dalai Lama thought, oh, the Buddha said, dear fellow Sangha, don't follow me ignorantly, blindly by saying that I'm a great teacher, great learner. Like the goldsmith, melt the gold, tear the gold. If it's a pure gold, they keep it. Like the same way, analyze on my teaching. It clearly shows it's not a dogmatic. It's something to do with the logic. And His Holiness the Dalai Lama divides the Buddhists into 3 things: Buddhist science, Buddhist philosophy, and Buddhist religion. Buddhist science is something that look for the fact. Buddhist philosophy is something that look for the possibilities. Buddhist religion is something that now you have developed a firm conviction and time to practice it. Oh, in the science, they talks about the law of the dependent, the Newton's 3 law in the physics. Oh, then what are the possibilities? Now comes in the debate with this philosophy. Yeah, this is it. Now let me meditate. Buddha said, you are master of yourself. But it doesn't mean that you study by yourself and you become a master. To become a master, first we have to listen, then understand, then realize with the help of meditation. What's the dependent origination? Yes, this is the dependent origination. Then try to understand it. What is it? Otherwise, if you don't discuss, if you don't debate, as for us in the monastery, we have to debate 5 hours daily, 4.5 hours, 2 in the afternoon, 2.5 in the evening. So it helps to understand oneself clearly. Otherwise, if we don't debate, if we study by ourselves, then it will become like letting the 5 blind people to touch to an elephant. Everyone has got the answer, but no one has got the full answer. To get the full answer, we need to debate. like this seminar, and discuss. So His Holiness, the Dalai Lama, started discussing with a scientist. And conference on the quantum physics and Madhyamika philosophical view. And recently, His Holiness, the Dalai Lama, has had a discussion with a Chinese scientist from America, from Taiwan, in Dharamsala. So here, quantum effects. The quantum, it talks about what? It says there is no kind of like absolute object. Now it almost talks like the what? The emptiness. But to understand this, we have to understand dependent origination. Without understanding the dependent origination, we can't understand what the emptiness is. There's one emptiness called emptiness of emptiness. So this is, and if you are interested, you can go back to your room and look for the Mind and Life Institute. So Buddha, by giving a blessing, I can't lead you to the enlightenment. I have shown you the path. Now you are master of yourself. Over here, what it says is, I want happiness. By prayer, by doing a prayer, by giving someone else blessing, one won't develop a happiness. To develop a happiness for oneself, we have to develop a compassion, warm-heartedness. Why should I develop a warm-heartedness and compassion? Then comes dependent origination. My happiness depends upon the others. At the time of birth, with the help of someone else, I got birth. With the help of someone else, I got the education. With the help of someone else, I'm survived. With the help of someone else, I got the job. With the help of someone else, at the time of death, I will get the affection. Even after the death, someone else will help me to wind up. So which means from the beginning of birth till death, we are depending on the others. So why should I develop a hatred, jealousy to the others? So this dependent origination, in deep, it has a very vast meaning to lead one's life. Then that which destroys cyclic existence from the root is the meditation on the emptiness of the inherent existence of the self and phenomena. So in the end, one needs to meditate to understand it. Right? So in Tibet, by practicing this dependent origination and realizing the emptiness, Tibet has produced some of the great lamas, masters, like Lama Tsongkhapa, like Milarepa. So, in the science, what do they say? Every angle has an equal and opposite reaction. In the Christian, what do they say? God help those who help themselves. In the economics, what do they say? What you pay is what you get. In the English, what do they say? Where there is a will, there is a way. In the math, what do they say? Practice makes perfect. Then in the karma, what do they say? Welcome to the Karma Cafe. We don't have any menu. You will serve what you deserve. So, if you practice dependent origination, right, then one will have a happy life. Thank you. So in the end, thinking about the dependent origination to develop a good warm heart. If you can help to others, help as much as you can. And if you can't help, at least restrain from harming. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Genzin, Tenzin, Namcho. Very interesting talk. And I think in this panel we have lots of things to consider, especially the point of contact between these northern Indian and Tibetan traditions with the Pali Theravada tradition. That is something that's on my mind after listening to these lectures. Anyway, now is time for questions and answers, so perhaps I could open it out to the floor. Venerable members of the Sangha and the laity, if you have any questions for the panel.
So thank you very much for your wonderful presentation. That it's very good to know that Tibetan Buddhism, dependent origination in Tibetan Buddhism. And first, even though you said you are the junior disciples of the Buddha, but we are very impressed with Tibetan Buddhists for your propagation of Buddha Sasana. So, and you also mentioned that all the texts are translated into Tibetan language. So my question is, that translation is from Chinese or Sanskrit?
As I've told you earlier, that we have to study, like to get the highest doctorate degree, we have to study 21 years. Then, like to get the lower degree, that's for the minimum, like 16 years. For these 16 years courses, we have divided into 5 major texts. First one, the Prajna Paramita, the perfection of wisdom, for 6 years. Then Madhyamika for 3 years, the middle view school. Then Abhidhammakosha, the treasure of knowledge, written by the Vasubandhu for 3 years. Then Pramana Vatikarika, we have to study for like 3 years. Then Vinaya for 3 years. So all these texts are written by the Indian Buddhist masters, the root. Then we have on this root, we have lots of commentaries. And all these root texts, first you will find Yagarketu. Yagarketu means in Indian language, Abhidhammakosha. Then in Pyoketu, in Tibetan language, like that. So which it clearly shows that all these 5 major texts are translated from India. But we don't deny that none of the texts are translated from Chinese. There are few texts which are translated from the Chinese language into Tibetan. But the major, what do we call the direct teachings and the commentaries by the Indian Buddhist masters, it's all are translated from Indian language.
Thank you. And I have another question. And you mentioned that without understanding that emptiness, we cannot understand dependent origination. And you also mentioned that emptiness of emptiness. So could you please explain a little bit? Because here, emptiness, is it the same as anatta?
Anatta.
Non-self.
Oh, yes, no self.
Is it the same?
Yeah, then later on, like, then what do we say? No self and no phenomena. So over here, when this morning, no ears, no eyes, no all these things, it doesn't mean that there isn't. There is, but on the conventional basis, on the conventional level. Then, on the ultimate level, with the introspection, we won't find. But it doesn't mean that it doesn't exist. It exists through the interdependent.
I see.
So, it's very hard. It's very hard. Why? Because for this particular topic, we studied for the last 10. So to put in a nutshell, so let's say to put in a nutshell, So the flower over here, right? On the conventional basis, we all see, yeah, there's a flower. But when we take a bit by bit through the introspection, where is the flower? Atoms. Then we further protons, then electron, protons, then quarks. We won't find it. With the assemblation, then it becomes a flower. Let's say with a single paper, I won't call it a notebook. So to call this as a notebook, a paper, it has to depend upon this one. To call this one two books, two papers, it has to depend upon this one. Then with a combination becomes what? Paper. Where's the paper? Where's the notebook? Oh, this one. Where I don't find it. So where's the paper? Further, you won't find it. This is phenomena. Now on the self. Where is the self? Is it a separate entity from my body? Or my body itself is a self? Or my consciousness is a self? And in the deep sleep, the consciousness, now we divide into three divisions. Gross, subtle, very subtle. The gross, I see you, you see me, I hear you. This all depends upon the brains. Then when I go to deep sleep, all this consciousness will submerge into the mental consciousness. At that time, if someone tells me, oh, try to open my eyelid, I won't see. If someone calls my name, Geshe Thamche, I won't hear. If someone keep my best food in front of my nose, still always snoring, like that, I won't feel it. Then it's another level of little bit subtle. Another subtle consciousness comes at the time of death. If we say that in the deep sleep, that is the I, the self, then what about the one when I'm awake is not a self? At the time of death, that subtle consciousness, if that is I, then we won't be able to call it as, when we are not dead, we won't call it if there is no I. So this is another way of like, that's why His Holiness the Dalai Lama, tells the modern psychology as kindergarten. As for we Buddhists, we were trying to understand oneself, one's mind, for the last 3,000 years. So that's why modern psychology is a new thing, right? So that's I. Where is that I? So let's say again, my father, father's father, father's father, father's father. Who's that? So what do we say? That special, that I, it's a beginningless. It's also an endless, but there's a suffering. Suffering, there's an end to it. So, yeah.
Okay.
So
Thank
this
you.
emptiness. So to call I, myself. So it has to depend upon the I and the body. The consciousness and the body, mind and the body. When the mind leaves, then I'm dead. Then I won't be able to call myself as I. To call myself as I need a body and the consciousness. So that's interdependent. So which clearly shows that it's not an independent. So emptiness is the negation of independent existence.
Okay, thank you so much. I also have another point to discuss with you later.
Okay.
I should give
here,
chance to others.
I'll be here till 15. So whenever you have free time, you can come and ask.
Thank you for that discourse, Geshe. As we'd say in Pali, aneka pariyayena, I think. And before we move on to some more questions, just the first question there was asked about where do Tibetan Buddhist texts come from? And they come from mainly Sanskrit translations made from Sanskrit. And an example of one of those texts was Maxim's presentation. the Sanskrit manuscript of the Abhidharmakosha Bhashya was discovered in Tibet. And I still believe that in Beijing they have a large collection of Sanskrit manuscripts recovered from Tibet. So I was wondering perhaps if Dr. Mattia could say anything about that.
Well, they do. There's a very large collection, and it has even been photographed. And not many people have seen it yet, but slowly the situation is becoming better. The manuscripts are becoming more accessible, and there's been several collaborations. So actually, even the study of Indo-Tibetan Buddhism, I think, is changing rapidly and is improving a lot thanks to the accessibility of all these manuscripts. Now we have many more texts accessible compared to what was available even, I think, 40 years ago. Thinking about Madhyamaka, right now they are editing the Madhyamaka Avatara Bhashya, which is one of the key texts even to understand the Gelug tradition, in fact, by Chandrakirti. Right now it's been edited and it probably will come out quite soon. Also texts of Abhidharma are being edited. The Stiramati's commentary on the Abhidharmakosha is being edited, and there's a number of other texts connected to the Pramana tradition. Mostly they are from Sanskrit. There's actually a certain number of texts which were translated even from the Pali. So there are some Pali texts translated into Tibetan. It's not a very large collection, but there are some. Some texts are translated from Sanskrit, but it's not a classical register of Sanskrit. It's the Sanskrit that we find, for example, in many sutras, in the verse portions of these sutras, where the vibhakti endings are not so regular, and the normal grammatical rules might not appear as in a different register of Sanskrit. And then, yes, there are a few texts translated from Chinese. I think some sutras as well. Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Mattia. So we still have another half an hour or so of questions, and any more questions from the floor, please? At the back. You just pass the microphone.
Hello, my name is Adam Conway. I'm a student of Pali and Vipassana meditation in the tradition of Sayadaw U. I had a question for Mr. Mattia. At the beginning of your talk, I think you said agent in Sanskrit does not necessarily mean person. I would really appreciate if you could expand on that somewhat.
We are used to think of agent as a person, but in fact, the category agent is just meant to express whatever we want to express as the most prominent causal factor. So, for example, from the perspective of Sanskrit grammatical analysis, I can say Devadattaha Agnina Odanam Pachati. So Devadatta cooks rice with fire. In this case, I want to highlight the causal prominence of a person called Devadatta. And when I want to highlight the causal prominence of Devadatta, I use this kind of construction where fire appears as the instrument. It's in a different vibhakti, in a different ending, and it appears as the instrument. But if I want to emphasize the causal prominence of fire, I can say Agnihi Odanam Pachati. Fire cooks rice. In that case, fire is the agent. Fire is not a person. I can also say one moment in a causal continuum produces an effect. In that case, the moment is our agent. And this type of discussion is found in Buddhist philosophical texts. So that implies that when they discard the agent, it's at a subtler and more sophisticated level. It's not just discarding a person. We are talking about subtler and, yes, rather more sophisticated level of analysis. Does this answer your question?
Yes, that's great. Thank you.
Is there anybody who would like to ask more questions?
Good evening. I want to discuss about the emptiness again because I just confused in the emptiness. I understand the emptiness it is in Pali, sunyata. Is right? So what is the sunyata nirvana? Sunyata nirvana. What is the sunyata nirvana? Because in the Theravada Buddhist book, in the Abhidhamma Sangha, and in the Parajika Pali, I see this word, the Sunyata Nibbana. So in the Sanskrit, Sunyata Nirvana. So what is the Sunyata Nirvana? I want to understand clearly.
So we have a question about Pali, but I think Geshe might want to answer this.
I'll just try to answer. I'm sorry. So let's say the shunya in the Sanskrit and also in the Hindi means number 0.
Yes, sunyata, yeah.
Yes. And shunya in the number 0, it looks like it doesn't have any value, right? But without the number 0, nothing works.
Mm-hmm.
Like the same way, the emptiness,
Yeah.
Over here, emptiness is the negation of attachment. Attachment is something which brings us suffering. So with the help of emptiness, we should be able to overcome the self-attachment.
Yeah.
So with the help of self-attachment and with the help of understanding, realizing the emptiness, when we don't have any attachment, when we don't have the 3 delusions. Furthermore, in the Madhyamika, what they say is...
Yes, I understand your Madhyamika philosophy, yeah. Yeah. Okay,
So
continue.
what it says is
Yeah.
ignorance, 3 delusions, ignorance, anger, desire. So over here, the ignorance of what? The reality. So antidote for the ignorance is the wisdom. The wisdom itself is what? Emptiness. With the help of emptiness, understanding the reality, then it becomes the awakened one, enlightened. Right? So without what the people they think is, by developing only the compassion, bodhicitta, one will attain enlightenment. No. By only the emptiness, one will realize, by realizing the emptiness, one will attain enlightenment. No. It's a true wings of a bird. With let's say, I've given, as he's always given the example, the wind and the energy. If there's a wind, without the energy, one won't be able to fly. If there's a energy without the wind, they won't be able to fly. It needs both. Like the same way, emptiness and the compassion, we need both. That's why when we talk about the compassion, we need to talk about the dependent origination. When we talk about the emptiness, we have to talk about the interdependence. Then dependent origination. So without these two, one won't attain enlightenment. So with the help of only emptiness, right, then we might do a bias. So we might don't develop a compassion to the others. Then it will be kind of like self-liberation, arahat. Not only the moksha, not the enlightenment. So to attain enlightenment, we need both. With the compassion only, we won't be able to realize the emptiness and we won't see the reality. So, no matter whether it's in the Pali, no matter whether it's in the Madhyamika, whatever Sanskrit, whatever it may be, without the emptiness, and not only the emptiness, compassion too.
Yeah, but in the Madhyamika philosophy, according to the Madhyamika philosophy, emptiness means all is nothing. Yeah, so
Now there's
just
a
I
danger
confuse here.
now
But
there's-
Buddha said not like that.